Yep, lesson 6, congruent polygons. This lesson is going to be very, very quick and very short. However, okay, there will be more work for you to do because it's short. However, even that work is going to be very, very easy. Okay, all the other classes were able to finish it in just a little over 20 minutes. So I'm sure you guys will have some time. I have said this word before, congruent. Who remembers what it means when shapes are congruent? So not regular polygon, that's different. When shapes are congruent, that means they have two of the same what? That means that it's they share the same, looking for two words. Maxon, same size and same, Hunter? Shape, good. So let's just write that down just so that we don't forget. Okay, here we go. Congruent shapes. I'll tell you in just a second. Okay, so congruent shapes are identical in shape and size. Okay, so if we're looking at shapes that are congruent, same shape, same size. So I'm going to draw something on the board. It's not going to be accurate because, again, I don't have my ruler up here. But let's say I drew I know it's not accurate, but would you say that those are pretty congruent? Yes. Now let's say I drew it this way. So that's one pair. Let's say I drew it this way. Would you say that those are also pretty congruent? Okay, the reason why I'm saying this is because some people tend to think that because they are not side by side, that they're not congruent. Can two shapes still be congruent even if they're in different positions? Yes, they can. Okay, so the only difference is that these shapes, one of them is flipped upside down. So the position doesn't change the size and the shape. Okay, if the shape and the size are the same, they are still considered congruent. Okay, so this is the main thing we need to remember today. We're going to do a little bit of practice in the workbook. Let's turn to page 88, please. Okay, page 88. Yep, it's very quick and very simple. And then after that, I'm going to give you some work to do, and that's pretty much it. So the main thing we need to remember and identify for today is how can we determine how shapes are the same size and shape? Yes. We'll see. Yeah, because there's still a few things else that I want you to do too. Okay. Page 88, please. Are we all there? Okay, so on this page, okay, 1A and B, you're going to circle the two shapes in each row that are congruent. Okay, so let's look at 1A. Who can tell me which two shapes should we be circling? The first and the second and the third, or the third and the first? So which two shapes are congruent? Hannah, for 1A. Good, the first and the second one. So you're going to circle the first and the second one. So that's a pair. What about for B? Which pairs are congruent in B? First and the second and the third, or the third and the first? Rianica. Third and first. So we're circling the third and the first. Okay, let's look at number 2. We're going to match each of those congruent. We're going to look at those shapes, sorry, and we're going to find 2. There are 2 congruent pairs. Can anyone find one for me for number 2? So there are 2, but who can find me? Who can tell me what one of them are? Max, one of them are? Good, A and D. So let's write that down. A and D, and there's one more. So A and D. And then the other congruent pair is Jacob? B and, sorry? G, good, B and G. Okay, excellent. Any questions? Thumbs up if you understand congruent shapes. Okay, so here's your work for today. Let's go back into the textbook, page 370. Okay, so 1AB, 2, 3AB, 4AB. I'll go over each question with you before you start. 5AB, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so pretty much you're doing the whole thing. Like I said, both classes were able to finish in less than 20 minutes, so you guys should. Okay, here's how to do number 1. So you're going to look at the hexagon, the blue hexagon. Do you guys all see that for number 1? So it's asking, do you think the two parts of the hexagon, okay, are congruent? So for 1, you're going to tell me whether they are. Then for B, it says, explain how you could check. Okay, so who can give me a few examples? How could you check to see if they actually were congruent? There's a few ways to test or to check. Isabel, Kim, what's one way? What's one thing we can do? Good, okay, so would you have to trace it first and then fold it, or would you just fold it? Okay, so yeah, so Isabel Kim is saying if it was already drawn on paper, you could fold it to see if all the edges line up. Okay, that's one way. What's another way, Mateo? Okay, so that's kind of like the same thing. So you would kind of see if you would mirror it. So you, right. So I think what he means is the same thing like what she said. Like if you fold it, then you could see if it's flipped on the other side. So yeah, so folding. What's another way? Okay, so if we have the actual like those little polygon shapes, you would actually take 2 of them to see if they're going to be congruent. Yeah. What else could you do? Yeah. So you could measure the sides to see if they're the same on both. Good. Okay. Another one. So you could check the angles to see if all the angles are the same. Okay. You could also, if we had, yeah, so same thing like what Maria was saying. You can measure the sides of the ruler, or like Alex was saying, you can measure the angles with a protractor. Okay, tracing paper is another option. So if you had tracing paper, you could trace one side, okay, and see if it's going to align with the other one. Okay, any questions about how to do number 1? Number 2, again, very simple. Which of those quadrilaterals and those 3 sets, that set of 3 are congruent? So you would say this letter is congruent to this letter. All right, number 3, A and B. Listen carefully, guys. Take a look at number 3. There are 2 different size shapes here. Do you guys see that for number 3? So do you guys see how there's a D with a square, and then there's an E with a square? So they're asking, does square D, is it equivalent to square E? So we're not paying attention to these triangles on the outsides. We're paying attention to the squares of each of those shapes. Are those squares congruent? Okay, and it says test to find out if the squares are congruent. So you decide how you want to test or check to see that they're congruent. Okay, number 4, pay attention. Number 4, it says draw a regular polygon, okay, with 3 sides. Let's review from last lesson. What is a regular polygon? A regular polygon is a shape that has same sides, same angles. So if the book is asking you to draw a regular polygon with 3 sides, what are you actually drawing? A triangle, but what kind of triangle? An equilateral triangle, very good. So for number 4A, you're going to draw me an equilateral triangle. Then for 4B, it says draw a polygon that looks like it might be congruent, but actually isn't. So for 4A, you're going to draw me an equilateral triangle. You're going to draw me a triangle that's got same length, sides, same angles. And then for B, you're going to draw me another polygon that looks congruent, but it's not. Who can give me an example of one way that we can draw another polygon that might look similar or congruent to a equilateral triangle, but it actually isn't? What's one way that we can draw that? We can change the size. Good. So we can draw one maybe bigger or smaller. What's another way that we can draw an equilateral triangle that doesn't look congruent but almost does? We can change the number of sides. Okay, so we can change the number of sides to maybe make it look like an isosceles triangle as opposed to an equilateral triangle. Okay, so for 4A, you're drawing me an equilateral triangle. For 4B, you're going to draw me another triangle that looks like it's the same, but it's not the same. Okay, number 5. Number 5, it says transform triangle F. So triangle F is to your left. Do you guys see triangle F? The yellow triangle. You're going to transform that triangle so that the 5 centimeters is at the top. So think about that. Where's the 5 centimeters right now in this picture? At the bottom. So what do you think you need to do so that the 5 centimeters is at the top? What are we pretty much doing with that triangle? So they've given you this. 5 centimeters is down here. They want you to transform it so that this is now at the top. So what are we pretty much doing with this triangle, Danica? We're rotating it, and the triangle is now going to look like that. It's going to be upside down. Okay? So in other words, for number 5, the 5 centimeters is now in this position. Okay, so you're going to draw me the triangle that looks like it's with the 5 centimeters at the top. Then the question is asking, are they still congruent even though we flip them? What do you guys think? Yes, they still would be congruent. Number 6 is very easy. Number 6, you're going to look at this triangle here and tell me all the colors that are congruent. Okay, so which triangles in this big triangle are congruent? Number 7, you're going to explain to me how you can use transformations to show that these 2 triangles are congruent. So you could say, for example, the top triangle, I could do a translation of this many to the left and this many down to see if it's congruent. What transformation, so we're kind of going back to a few units before, what transformation can we do to show that these are the exact same shape and size for number 7? So what can we do? Can we rotate it? Can we flip it? Can we mirror it? Can we translate it? What can we do? There's more than one way. Yeah, so you tell me what way you can do, whatever way you think. And the last one, number 8. Think about this for a second. It says 2 polygons have the same angles and the same number of sides. Do they have to be congruent? Think about that for a second. A polygon has the same number of sides and the same angles. Do they have to be congruent? What do you guys think? Who thinks yes? Raise your hand. Who thinks no? Okay, who can tell me why? So they can have the same sides, same number of sides, same number of angles, but they're not congruent. Pascal? The size, right? One could be bigger than the other, right? Let's say I had this, a square, and I had this square. Do they both have 4 angles? Do they both have 4 sides? Are they congruent? No. So for number 8, you know what you need to tell me, right? You can have 2 of the same shape, okay, but if they're not the same size, they're not congruent. You can still have 4 angles, and you can still have 4 sides, for example, but because they're not the same size, okay, they don't have to be congruent, not all the time. Okay, I am 90% sure you will all finish this in 15 minutes. So if you are finished early with a partner, I'm writing it up here. With a partner, you can do workbook, page 89 and 90. Okay, workbook page 89 and 90 if you are finished early. I need to see that you have finished page 370, all of these questions before, yes, go ahead. All of these questions before you start this one. Yes. Okay, I'm turning. Okay.